Awesome. Thanks, Pat. Focus ahead. Ignite the future, folks. It's not something that we're just going to talk about today or what we can do today. It is about the future. It is about tomorrow. And we need to prepare for that future today, obviously. Why do we plan? Anybody, why do we plan? Anybody? To win? Okay. Absolutely. Why else do we plan? Bueller? How about this side? Planning, ladies and gentlemen, allows us to project our thoughts forward in time so we can influence events rather than react to events. That's one of the reasons we plan. So we need to light that fuse now. And as Pat just outlined, there is a huge opportunity out there for you. So how do you take advantage of that opportunity? How do you ignite the future? Ladies and gentlemen, you do it through flawless execution. All right, McKesson Top Guns, how are we doing again? Much, much better. As I said, my name is Matthew Buckley. My call sign is Whiz, and I flew the FA-18 Hornet for the United States Navy for over 15 years. Thank you. I graduated from the Navy Fighter Weapons School, which many of you know as Top Gun, and I also flew 44 combat sorties over southern Iraq. Decided maybe that wasn't boring enough. Thanks. Decided to head to Wall Street, where I applied a lot of those methodologies that I learned flying fighter aircraft, the leadership, the organization, the teamwork, the communication, the discipline, and I applied it to Wall Street. I became the managing director of strategy for a $2.5 billion volatility arbitrage firm based in the Chicago Board of Trade. And after about 3.5 Chicago winters, I decided they were best left for somebody other than me, and decided to move down to South Florida, to Boca Raton, Florida, where I started my own financial company, where I teach people how to trade equity options, and I also run a hedge fund. I am here today representing a company called Afterburner. And Afterburner, we believe, in order to pursue that flawlessly executed mission that Pat described, you need what we call the 3 E's. You need to empower the right people in your organization to go out there and execute. And we're looking at them right here in this room. You need to be equipped with the right tools, the right technology to help your customers succeed. And you need to embed the right leaders in your organization. And you all wouldn't be sitting in this room right now if that wasn't you. Now, Afterburner is an international company of approximately 100 men and women who currently, or at some point in the recent past, flew fighter aircraft for the United States Navy, Air Force, or Marine Corps. Additionally, Afterburner has what we call special operators. We have Navy SEALs, U.S. Army Green Berets as well, and we go into companies and we teach them all of those methodologies that we learned as military officers. Well, if any of you have seen fighter aircraft flying around, you know that we never fly alone. Minimum of 2. Hell, I'd bring 4, 6, 18 wingmen with me if I could, and today's no different. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome my wing woman for today's mission, Jules. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Jules is from the United States Air Force, so we're going to speak slowly to Jules today, because they're barely on our side, to be honest with you. But Jules flew the A-10 Warthog for the United States Air Force. Over 2,500 hours of flight time. She's a marketing rep. She got her MBA from George Washington University. She currently flies for Delta Airlines, and she's one of our most senior executive consultants here at Afterburner. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jules, and you'll hear from her in a couple minutes. Now, I have a question for you. How many of you in this room have seen the movie Top Gun? And you're still willing to admit it. Okay, good. That was a prerequisite for being here. So, Pat, thanks for sending out the email. Everybody watch that. Love the movie Miracle. Anybody remember, well, first of all, who are the main characters in Top Gun? Exactly, Maverick and Goose, right? Characters being the key word there. Anybody remember that scene in the movie where they're zorching along at about 600 knots, and their oxygen mask is kind of dangling down, and they're wondering what bar they're going to that night or what baby oil they're going to use in the volleyball scene, right? And watch out for the mountains. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when you're flying a $60 million fighter aircraft, that ain't exactly the attitude in the front office. Flying an F/A-18 Hornet is extremely physically demanding. The F/A-18 that I flew could pull up to 9 Gs. That's 9 times the force of gravity. So if I weigh 200 pounds, under 9 Gs, I weigh 1,800 pounds. It's extremely hard to stay conscious. The blood that's in your head is getting pulled to your lower extremities. Anybody pass out recently? Come on, we're all friends here. Where's Lynn Messick from SCS? You didn't pass out last night, Lynn? Come on. No, I kid. Lynn's actually doing a great, she's going up against the Death Star at Kaiser. She's one of our great Jedi Masters, so I kid, Lynn. But if you have passed out recently, what's the first thing that goes? You're right, your vision. You get tunnel vision. You start to gray out. I want to merge with my competition, and I want to win so badly that I'll put 9 Gs on the aircraft and start to lose my vision. I can still fly and fight the aircraft. I can still talk. Regain sight, get more angles, ease off on the G, get my vision back because I want to win. It's also very mentally challenging. 1 second I'm up at 40,000 feet with Jules flying formation. We're working that radar, trying to determine if those blips are friend or foe, and selecting the right weapon at the right time and putting one down range before taking one right in the forehead. The next minute, we're down at 500 feet, ingressing to an ISIL camp in Syria, getting shot at by weapons that we gave them, but we'll talk about that over a beer. So it's very mentally challenging as well. Now, the video I'm going to share with you is what we call a dogfight. A 1-versus-1 air combat maneuvering flight. Now, this was shot in my squadron. This is me versus a squadron mate over the Republic of Texas. Hey, we left once. We can leave again, folks. Don't tempt us here. But we have a saying flying fighter aircraft. You fight like you train, and you train like you fight. So this is a training mission. But I want you to watch the intensity with which we trained. Because in a 1-versus-1 dogfight, there's one winner and there's one loser, and the loser doesn't get to go home that night. So sit back, relax, let's go fly and fight in F-18.
3, 2, 1, fight's on. It's good. It's fine. Trigger down. Snap. Try to go flat to the west. Ooh, nice. Nice pirouette. Blind sun. Continue. Nice. Visual.
Bingo. Bingo.
200 pounds of gas. No. Hi. No. Pirouette. Oh, yeah.
Just like Top Gun, huh? What did you, we can make fun of the heavy breathing during the break, but what did you find unusual about that clip? Where did I spend the vast majority of my time focused? Was it inside the front office? No, where was I focused? Outside, on my mission objective, on my threat for that day. We have another saying flying fighter aircraft: you lose sight, you lose the fight. You ever lose sight of your mission objective, your threats to success, you're always going to lose the fight. Very appropriate in air-to-air combat, extremely appropriate in the business world as well. Today, Jules and I are going to teach you a methodology, an ethos, a process that's not only going to help you keep sight of the competition, it's going to help you improve everything you do, and it's called the flawless execution model. Think about those two words together, flawless execution. Is that possible? Can we ever flawlessly execute a mission? Probably not. But don't you want to be part of a team, part of an organization that is always in pursuit of that flawlessly executed mission? Hell yeah. That's the type of organization I come from, the United States Navy. It's the type of company that I own and operate, always in pursuit of that flawlessly executed mission. Now, the flawless execution model is simple in shape. It's a pyramid, right? Political science major, knuckle-dragging Navy guy, so it's got to be simple. Up at the top is what we call the HDD. It's the high-definition destination. This is the star that we're going to navigate to. This is where our commanding officer wants us to go. That's communicated out to us via what we call a strategy. And then we add what we call color and clarity to this with the leader's intent. We don't throw a rifle at a Marine and say, hey, go march in this direction. Why, sir? Just do it. Is there any buy-in to that mission? Absolutely not. Marine, grab this rifle, march in this direction. Guard this bridge for the next 4 hours so an armor brigade can cross. Take this town, win the war. You got it, sir. Done. The leader's intent, the why behind it. Now, down at the bottom of the flawless execution model, probably the most important part. The right people, hopefully on the right bus, and in the right seat, as our buddy Jim Collins would say. And they have to be trained. We have to spend some time, some resources to make sure they are trained, and then they need to execute in accordance with what we call SOPs, standard operating procedures. So when we become task saturated, we can fall back on, you know what, this is what we do at this point in time in this situation. But what we're going to talk about for the majority of the time this morning is what we call the flawless execution cycle. It's where we plan, we brief the plan to our team, we go out and execute, and then we do what 98% of companies and organizations around the world do not do. We stop. We get together behind closed doors, we take the name tag off, we take the rank off the chest, and we hold what we call a nameless and rankless debrief, where no punches are pulled. We surface execution errors and successes, and we get better. And we incorporate that into the plan, and it gets tighter and tighter. Now, the flawless execution model begins with the plan. Now, sitting in front of you is what we call a knee board card. It's about a 5x8 card. If you didn't notice in that clip, my desk is a little small. It's 2 knees. So that's where we put our stuff, so I strongly recommend that you follow along with that knee board card. When I left that firm in Chicago after 3.5 years, those were still sitting in people's binders, or they'd pop them out during meetings. You're going to use that for the rest of your career, I guarantee you. The flawless execution model begins with the planning process. I know you have a planning process here at MTS. You wouldn't be as successful as you are without it. I'm going to make you better. First of all, I hope you incorporate going forward what we call the concept of open planning. There's nothing worse than being in an organization where the heavies come out and throw these 15 commandments from on high, right? Go forth and execute. And old Red's sitting in the back of the room going, how the hell what? Are you kidding me? Get everybody involved in the planning that you can who's going to be involved in the execution. Nothing worse than the smoke-filled room, cigars, and a plan getting thrown at you, and everybody going, there's no way in hell this is going to work. Get the people from the new hire to the front line, to the middle, to the heavies involved in your planning process. That creates buy-in. That rapidly accelerates the buy-in of this plan throughout the organization. And when old Red sits in the back of the room and goes, why the hell are we doing this? Somebody can elbow him and go, I was in the planning session. Here's why we're doing it. Why don't you get on board? Open planning is an extremely powerful concept. The first step in our 6 steps to mission planning that's going to make your planning tighter after we walk out of this room is to determine the mission objective. Now, notice I didn't say a mission statement. A mission objective. And in my world, a mission objective has 4 things. It is clear, It's measurable, it's achievable, and it supports that HDD, that high definition destination of where we want to go. Let me give you an example in my world. Let's say yesterday, an Air Force F-15 got shot down, the pilot ejected, and is behind enemy lines. Why? Because, as we know, Air Force pilots aren't good. But my commanding officer comes to me and says, hey, Whiz, go support the rescue effort. Win one for the Gipper. How's that mission objective? Is that good? Of course it's not good. Whiz, you lead 3 other F-18s, protect the airspace above the downed pilot from the surface to 50,000 feet from 1605 to 1817 Zulu. Clear? Crystal. Measurable? You're not going to see an insect fly in that airspace. Achievable? Absolutely, within the capabilities of my training in my aircraft, and it supports Air Commanding Officers' HDD, that high-definition destination of bringing everyone home safe. That's a good mission objective, a good tactical mission objective. What about for the McKesson Top Guns, the star that we're navigating to, the HDD? We want to be the premier provider of distribution and tech solutions in the healthcare space. Awesome. Noble goal, that's the star we're navigating to. Our commander-in-chief, who will be here this afternoon, that's where we want to go, Skipper. Aye, aye. Is that going to help us with our daily activities, our weekly activities? Maybe not. How about turning that 90 degrees tighter? MTS Top Guns, by 31 December 2015, improve our class rankings across our 5 business units to be in the top 3. Getting tighter, aren't we? About 90 degrees tighter. Is that still going to impact my daily and weekly activities? How about let's get a tactical mission objective. By 15 November, every sales rep in this room is engaged in qualifying a cross-business unit deal. Clear, measurable, achievable, and it supports that overall strategic objective. Folks, that's a good mission objective. When you make a mission objective for yourself, for your team, no drinking a Chardonnay in front of a fireplace with a sweater on like, hey, let's be number 1, yay. The hell's that mean? Make your mission objectives clear, make them measurable so that a week, 6 months, or a year down the road, you can look back and go, hey, did we hit that mission objective? And half the room doesn't go, yeah, we did, and the other half's like, we didn't even come close. That's an example of a bad mission objective. After we do this, we have a laser-like mission objective. We move on to step 2 in our planning. We identify the threat. What is going to keep us from hitting that mission objective? Anybody know what that is on the left side of the screen? It's exactly right. That's a SAM. It's a surface-to-air missile. You see one of these things following you into work, you're gonna have a really bad day and shouldn't have gotten up. That's a very formidable external threat, right? We have some very formidable external threats as well. But at this point in my planning process, I get my team to team storm. We don't brainstorm. Brainstorm's Red talking for 20 minutes and everybody listening or wanting to stick a pen in their eye, right? We team storm. I say, folks, what threats are going to keep us from hitting our mission objective? And we categorize them as external, outside our 4 walls of our business unit or MTS, and internal, inside. Whiz, we've met the enemy, and it's us sometimes, right? And then I have my team put a little C or U after each threat. That lets me know if they believe that threat is controllable or uncontrollable. What do you think we do with uncontrollable threats? Hope, right? What about the weather? Even though I think as a naval aviator I can control the weather, I can't. So I don't sit in my planning session and go, wow, I hope the weather's going to be good. Do you think that's what we do in the military? Hope ain't a strategy. We save uncontrollable threats. I'll go to the last step for a brief second. For step 6, we plan for contingencies. We ask, what if the weather's bad? So when you brainstorm your threats, make sure they're internal or external, and put a little C or U after each one of them. That's an external threat for me, and it is controllable, and I'll tell you how in a couple seconds. But we have potential threats in this room as well, right? Industry perception, our class rankings, the Affordable Care Act, at the whims of politicians, right? What if we have limited access to that decision maker, the person who's signing contracts or writing checks? Obviously, we have threats that we need to identify. Now we move on to step 3 in our planning process. Identify available resources. 4 words, we're in Vegas, we can gamble. 25% probability. What is the most important word in that step, do you think? What is it? Available. This isn't the point in our planning process where I go, well, if only the boss would give me this, we can get this mission done. That's called tasking up. You don't task up. At this point in our planning process, we look around and go, what tools do we have currently in our toolkit? What available resources do we have to negate some of these threats and hit our mission objective? Available resources. I like to say in my world, if it's gray or green, it's an available resource. What about in this room? I'm looking around the room at a very, very, I was going to say mature, but there's probably HR people in the room, a strong, tenured sales team. We got a lot of vets in this room, right? A lot of vets with a lot of experience. Look to your left, look to your right. There is an available resource. Your pedigree, your history, man, what, 1833? This ain't your first rodeo. And you have a strong suite of solutions. You have a lot of available resources. After we look at our available resources, we move on to step 4, which is where we evaluate lessons learned. And a lesson learned is the product of a debrief. Something happened in the past, we debriefed it, and it becomes a lesson learned. Let me tell you how important lessons learned are in my world. I was a young 26, 27-year-old lieutenant, poor kid from South Jersey, one of 6, on the USS Kitty Hawk off the coast of Pakistan before we pulled into the Persian Gulf. I looked on the flight schedule that day, and I found that the next day I was going to be fighting 2 Pakistani MiG-21s. They're actually F-7s. The Chinese stole the MiGs and made their own, but you guys are probably familiar with MiGs, but it's actually 2 F-7s. What do you think I did the rest of the day? Fighting two MiGs tomorrow. Work out, right? Get some chow, go to bed early? Well, I did all of those things, obviously, but most importantly, I went down the passageway on the aircraft carrier, past a couple very big Marines with automatic weapons, through a couple very secure doors, sat down in front of a computer, typed in the word Pakistani MiG-21, and up popped every lesson learned from the Navy Fighter Weapons School at Top Gun and the Air Force Fighter Weapons School of the last 10, 15 years of exercises where we fought Pakistani MiGs. For the next hour, I sat there with my boots up on the desk, sipping on my venti upside-down caramel macchiato, accelerating my experience. I knew what airspeed they were going to come to the merge at. I knew what configuration they were going to be in. I knew who the flight lead would be based on their first. I knew everything, folks. I didn't even need to get airborne. It was not pretty for them. I had an absolute blast. Funnest, best flight of my career. Phenomenal. Now, after I landed back aboard USS Kitty Hawk, what do you think I did? After telling my squadron mates how cool I was. After that, what did I do? I went and debriefed. I went down past those big Marines, and I uploaded my lessons learned. Got an email a couple weeks later as we were leaving the Gulf and the USS Stennis was coming in. Hey, Whiz, F-18 pilot from another squadron, another carrier, never met the guy, never met him in my... Hey, reading your lessons learned, 3rd paragraph here, what did you mean? Hey, here's what I meant, man. Awesome. And I accelerated his experience. Are we doing that? Are we doing that in our business units on our team? Are we talking wins, losses, and figuring out what worked, what didn't, and transferring those lessons learned, not only through our business unit, throughout MTS? We're going to talk a little bit more about that in depth tomorrow. But step 4, you have got to evaluate your lessons learned. After step 4, folks, before we start saying who's going to do what by when, we ask this question. Is this mission a go or no-go? I'm going to take a second to pause here and stress something as leaders that you have to learn, because I'm looking at a whole big room of leaders. At this point in your planning process, if you get to it and you go, you know what, we're going to get slaughtered. This mission's a no-go. If you go on that mission and you're leading that team, it is your fault if that fails, period. If you get to this point in your planning process and it's a no-go, you have to go up. Now, this ain't my first rodeo either. Whether it was in the Navy or the business world, I understand that you go up. Admiral, here's why I think this mission is going to fail. He or she's going to listen intently, and half the time is going to go, Whiz, I appreciate that. You just told me, I told you to take the machine gun nest on the top of the hill. You just said you're going to lose half your platoon. Yes, sir? Well, I hope you're not in the half that gets wiped out. Good luck. Right? Now, if that mission fails, who is responsible? That's exactly right. They are. The heavies are. This is a leadership moment here, folks. Make a no, go, or go decision at this point. And if it's a no-go, say something or you own it. Let's assume we're a go. Now we move on to what we call our step 5, develop our courses of action, our tactics. This is how we're going to get it done. Who is going to do what by when? And replace the word who for the rest of your business career with these 3 letters. And businesses hate these 3 letters, but it's going to improve your execution. SPA. Not the overpriced one on the 3rd floor here with the back rub. Single point of accountability. Garlic to a vampire in the business world. The business world hates this term, don't they? Hey, why didn't this get done? Well, Steve, was supposed to, and then, Kevin and Jill. Stop talking. Who owned this action item? I don't care if 5 people were executing it. Somebody had 51% of the vote. A single point of accountability. This is where we assign action items to individuals, and we hold each other accountable for the execution. Now, notice in our planning process, many of you would go straight from the appetizer to dessert, right? Here's our mission, Whiz, and here's who's doing it. Didn't you just miss a huge chunk that can make your plans better? Absolutely. Here's a step that's going to make your plans even more tighter. After we figure out who is going to do what by when, we stop and we do what we call a red team. This is where I grab 3 to 5 squadron mates, coworkers. They weren't involved in my planning process, but they have situational awareness as to what's going on. I bring them in, I sit them down, and I say, red team, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to get it done. And they listen quietly, they take notes, and when I get done, I say, red team, what do you got? And you can hear the shotguns go, and they start blasting away. They become my enemy. And we use the language of building to be nice. Hey, Whiz, did you consider this? Did you consider that? There's a surface-to-air missile site right there that you guys don't see. Did you notice it? You're going to run out of fuel here if the tanker shows up. And they blast away. The only words out of my mouth are, thank you for your input, next. Why? I just spent an hour and a half planning this mission. What's human nature? Exactly, to get defensive. Of course I thought about that, you idiot. No, I didn't. That was brilliant. But I'm not going to tell you that. Don't say a word other than I appreciate it. Whether it's the dumbest thing you've heard come out of anybody's mouth ever or the smartest, write it down. Thank you, I appreciate that. And let them blast away. I use the popcorn rule. When there's about 3 to 5 seconds between, shots, and now they're just making fun of my boots and, get your hair cut too. All right, appreciate it. Once the door clicks closed and they leave, then we can badmouth the red team. But then I get my original planning team back together and I say, whoa, we thought we had an airtight plan. Look at this. First point, great punch landed. Let's adjust our plan. Number 2 and number 3 really doesn't apply. Just cross those off. Number 4, another good punch landed. And we tighten our plan. Ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee you you're not doing this, and I guarantee you that's one of the reasons things fail. If you are not red teaming your plans, who is doing it for you? It's exactly right. The competition, the enemy. The last people on the face of God's green earth that you want to red team your plans are going to do it for you. Absolutely red team. Now, in my work with you all, I know that everything goes absolutely flawlessly, so we're not going to cover step 6, right? Planning for contingencies. Of course, we have got to plan for contingencies. This is our last step in our planning process. We get together after we are almost done our planning and we go, you know what? What if? What if that's Whiz, the flight lead, leading 24 aircraft over Syria, and that's him? Do we all start crying and scatter? Or does somebody take over and we launch a search and rescue effort? What if the weather is bad over the target and I can't drop my laser-guided bomb? What if, what if, what if? What if our class rankings drop? ACA gets repealed or modified. ICD-10 is delayed. What if, what if, what if? Ladies and gentlemen, the time for me to figure out what I'm going to do if I get shot at by a missile over Afghanistan is not when I get shot at by a missile over Afghanistan. That is when I start executing the things that I've thought through sitting in air conditioning, sipping on my Diet Coke. This happens, I'm doing this. Anybody use the term firefighting in the business world in this room? Hell, Whiz, I'm fighting fires right now, man, right? Ditch that word. Ditch that terminology for the rest of your business career. The reason you are fighting fires is because you're not contingency planning. You didn't sit in the planning process and go, what realistically could go wrong? that we can talk about right now instead of freaking the hell out when it goes wrong. Don't do that. Stop firefighting by contingency planning. Now, I will channel my inner Rumsfeld and say, I know there are unknown unknowns. There's always that 1 in a million missile, that 1 in a million shot, and you know what? We just got to deal with that. But I guarantee you, you're fighting fires because you didn't contingency plan. We have a saying, flying fighter aircraft, that flexibility is the key to air power. Well, at Afterburner and the companies we work with, we take that one step further and we say that preparation is the key to flexibility. Use these 6 steps in your planning process going forward, and I guarantee you it's going to make things tighter. We planned. We briefed the plan now to our team. And a brief is where we create alignment. It's where we get everybody who's going to be involved in the execution in a room, and I get what I call vertical head nods. And along with SPA, single point of accountability, I want you to remember these 3 words for the rest of your career. I got it. That was the hardest transition for me when I left the military and went into the business world. Jules, I need this done. Whiz, I got it. What do you think mentally happens when I tell Jules to do something? It's done. I don't care if that action item is a week, a month, or a year from now. In my mind, it's done. And if it's not going to get done, she's going to tell me immediately and give me a recommended course of action. I found out in the business world when somebody's like, yeah, I got that, Whiz. There was no way in hell he had that. I found out a week later, and I had to end up doing it. That's because we don't brief in the business world. We do a good job of planning. Hell, Whiz, we got death by planning. We need to sit in a room and brief. Here is our mission objective, and here who is doing what by when. You are the single point of accountability for this. You own this. And I need to get this in return, a vertical head nod, and I got it. That lets everybody else on the team know that he, in fact, does have that action item, and we are counting on him or her. Those 3 words are extremely powerful. Be the person who says, I got it, and you mean it. Nobody should leave a brief with a question mark over their head or a clue bird flapping on their shoulder. I have no idea what we're doing. If you do, it's on you. That is what a brief is. It creates alignment, assigns single point of accountabilities, and you hear those 3 words. It's that Apollo 13 moment, right? We go around the room, I am go for launch. I know every action item that I've been assigned, and I got it. After we brief, now it's time to just go out and execute. Well, ladies and gentlemen, execution is pretty easy if we have an accountable plan. And this came right out of step 5 of our planning process. Who's going to do what by when? Who's the single point of accountability? We also need to have what I call a disciplined execution rhythm, a series of briefs, debriefs, status updates that let the heavies know above us that everything's going fine. They have clarity into our plan. But ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I know that there is one thing that constantly gets in the way of that flawlessly executed mission, and it's something that we call task saturation. Now, 2 big words, right? Task saturation is nothing more than the perception, or actually the reality, of having too much to do without enough time, tools, or resources to get the job at hand done. Right? Half of you sit in this room going, man, I'm task saturated, just listen to you. Right? In my world, we call task saturation the silent killer. Why? Because it's silent, it's insidious, and it sneaks up on you, and you don't even know that you're getting task saturated. I have 2 very good friends, one in my wedding, who are no longer walking the face of this earth right now. They don't even know they're dead. 2 very similar mishaps out at the Persian Gulf at night behind the aircraft carrier. 2 splashes on the horizon, gone. 2 great dudes, 2 $60 million airplanes, flew perfectly good airplanes into the water. Anybody think they were bad pilots? Excellent aviators. K9 was doing a great job leaving Iraqi airspace. He was doing a great job of descending out of altitude, using his radar, talking over the radio, dumping fuel. If you land too heavy aboard the ship, that cable that you see in some of these videos will snap, whip around the flight deck, and cut people in half. He was doing a great job of keeping track of everything as he descended into the blackness of the Persian Gulf. It's as dark as the inside of a basketball, folks, I kid you not. He was keeping track of everything except what? One very important thing, and what was that? The earth, the water. Come on, Whiz. $6 million to train you, $60 million aircraft, he flew right into the water? Yep. And if I could jump in his cockpit 30 seconds, a minute before he hit the water, and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, "Hey, Canine, how are you doing, man? What would he have said?" "Everything's great, Whiz." "Why?" "Gone." That's how task saturation works. It's silent, it's insidious, it sneaks up on you, and it can be very, very deadly. We actually also call it channelized attention. We focus on one thing, and everything else tends to break down. Now, 20% of us in this room, when we become channelized or task saturated, what do? Boom, ear, steam out the ears. That's it, I'm done. Heading to the golf course, the bar, whatever. I'll see you guys later. Out. But about 80% of us, 80% of the time, don't do that. We just take on more and more and more until we break. Whiz, look at me. I'm spinning 12 plates. They got to love me here. Well, I do until you drop them, and then I'm going to kill you. My employees know that when they become task saturated, they better be the first to put up the bat signal. You would think type A's, Jules and I, would be the last people on the face of the earth that would admit that we couldn't hack something, and you'd be completely wrong. I don't want to fail, folks. I don't want to die. I want to succeed. And if I'm getting task saturated, man, hey, Jules, I need some help. One of the best ways to defeat task saturation is by recognizing it and actually employing what we call mutual support. Jules, I need some help, man. Whiz, I got some bandwidth. What do you need? Now, what I want to do right now is bring up Jules, and she's going to brief you on a very, very famous airline disaster where the end result is a tragedy. Task saturation. 50 years of aviation experience in this cockpit. This crew becomes task saturated, and the end result is very bad. Jules.
Thanks, Whiz. Good morning, McKesson team. How are you? Okay. Well, we're going to find out because it is now time for an audience participation exercise. This is going to be really simple. When I ask a question, I need for you all to respond as the cohesive group that you are. For instance, if I were to say group spell cat, I need all of you in unison and with enthusiasm to say C-A-T. Got it? Okay. Group spell hat. H-A-T. Perfect. You have spelled a one-syllable, three-letter word, and that all qualifies you for flight training with Whiz in the Navy. You give me a microphone, I'm going to get even. We really kid our fellow service pilots, but actually in the flying business as pilots, we like to keep things simple. At the end of the day, we like for our number of takeoffs to actually equal our number of landings. Because when that doesn't happen, it means that we have had to eject from the aircraft and ride back down to Mother Earth in a large silk parachute. Silk is a good word. Group spell silk. S-I-L-K. Group, what does a cow drink? Ooh. Okay, now where I come from, the cows drink water and they give milk, so you might want to have that checked out. That was back in Florida. Maybe it's different out here out west. I tell you what, I know it's Vegas. It was a really early morning and a late night, perhaps. Let's tone it down. I just want you to raise your hand really high when you know the answer to the question I'm going to ask now. I want you to raise your hand when you know what Y-E-S spells. Okay, what's it spell? Yes, just making sure. Okay, now I want you to raise your hand only when you know what E-Y-E-S spells. Harvard grad? State school? Okay, if your hand's not up, go ahead and raise it so you're not embarrassed. Eyes, right? Okay, you're going to come to me in the break and go, Jules, what the heck is an ES? But I tell you what, whether it's silk or YES, those are just a couple little examples of how easy it is to become channelized or focused on one particular thing, allowing your ability to pay attention to what's really important to degrade or break down. The video that I'm going to show you involves 3 highly trained, very experienced cockpit crew members who become channelized on the flight deck of a large commercial airliner, and the end result was a tragedy. This video is produced by the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, and the gentlemen that you're going to see are actual NTSB investigators who are recreating the actions and the movements of the ill-fated crew. But the audio that you're going to hear, everything from the bells and whistles, beeps and squeaks of the cockpit environment to the actual conversation among the crew members, is taken directly from the cockpit voice recorder, the black box of the mishap aircraft. The gentleman that you're going to see on the left is the captain or the aircraft commander. He's sort of like the CEO, the hammer, responsible for safe overall operation of the flight. Seated to his right is the first officer or co-pilot. Now, if you don't know, in the airline industry, every other leg, the captain and the first officer trade off duties as the actual flying pilot to maintain proficiency in flying and landing the aircraft. On this particular evening in question, the first officer was our actual flying pilot. Seated behind him sideways is the flight engineer. And back in the day, his responsibility was to look at the myriad of dials and gauges which showed the status of the aircraft's hydraulic, electric, and fuel systems. Let me bring you up to speed in the video so far. On December 29, 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401 was on a flight from New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport to Miami International. It was a warm, crystal clear winter evening. Weather is not at all a factor. The first officer, as I told you, was our flying pilot. He's just about to turn the aircraft on about a 10-mile approach to land into Miami when he calls for gear down landing checklist. The captain, non-flying pilot, reaches over, puts down the landing gear handle, and then he is looking for something very important to happen on the forward instrument panel. He's looking for 3 lights to illuminate to let him know that the right main, the left main, and the nose gear or wheels are down and locked and the aircraft can be landed safely. On this particular evening, the right and the left main gear indicate down and locked, but that nose gear light fails to illuminate. Our captain, the good commander, reaches over and he pulls out his emergency procedures checklist, opens it up to nose gear light fails to illuminate, and that checklist directs him to take the landing gear handle and cycle it back up and down and try it again. Our video is going to pick up as the captain has already put it back up a second time, he's about to put it back down, and still that nose gear light fails to illuminate. I want you to watch as this crew, this team, becomes channelized.
Miami Tower, Green Eastern 401, just turned on final.
Eastern 401 heavy, continue approach to 9 left.
Continue approach, Roger.
Now I better try it down one more time.
You want me to test the lights or not?
Yeah, check it.
Watch your seat back.
Doug, it could be the light. Could you jiggle the light?
It's got to come out a little and then snap in.
I'll put them on. Up to 2,000. You want me to fly, Doug?
What frequency did he want us on?
28.6.
I'll talk to him.
All right, approach control Eastern 401. We're right over the airport here and climbing to 2,000 feet. In fact, we've just reached 2,000 feet, and we've got to get the green light on our nose gear.
Eastern 401, roger. Turn left heading 360, maintain 2,000, vectors to 9 left final.
Left to 360.
I think it's above the red one.
Yeah, I can't get it from here.
I can't make it pull out either.
We got pressure?
Yes, sir, all systems.
Put the damn thing on autopilot.
All right.
Our captain just said, put the damn thing on autopilot. How do you all think our crew's doing right now? Well, they're kind of working the issue. They have some things to deal with, but the nice thing right now is that their roles are still well defined. The first officer is flying the aircraft, and it's at 2,000 feet. He's the flying pilot. The captain is backing him up and talking on the radio, and that flight engineer is looking at his dials and gauges and providing mutual support. But somebody is flying the aircraft, and it's at 2,000 feet. How many of you all, with a show of hands, think it's a good idea to put a large commercial airliner on the autopilot at 2,000 feet at night? Well, I kind of tricked you again. I would venture to say that 80 to 90% of the time that you're in the back of a large commercial airliner at 2,000 feet at night, it's on the autopilot. But it is the flying pilot's responsibility to monitor that autopilot and ensure that it is manipulating the controls just as if he or she were actually flying the aircraft. But when our captain said, put the damn thing on autopilot, In my opinion, he may as well have just said, hey, first officer, reach up there and mash that autopilot button so we can forget about flying this thing and all three dive in and solve the problem. Let me tell you the original design feature of the Lockheed L-1011 autopilot. It was designed if there was a push or a pull force of greater than 5 pounds on that control wheel or the yoke, the autopilots would kind of say, hey, I think the stupid human wants to fly. What do you think? Yep, he just pushed more than 5 pounds and click, that autopilot disengages. Now, for those of you who are pilots out there, you know that the first thing they teach us in flight school is the rate at which you push forward on the control wheel is directly proportional to the rate at which the houses out the front window get bigger. I want you to pay close attention to the first officer, the flying pilot, who's now become involved in this problem-solving process as he reaches forward to grab the nose gear light and gently nudges the control wheel.
See if you can put that light out. Well, you got to push the switch just a little bit further forward. Now turn it to the right a little bit. No, I don't think it's going to fit.
Hey, get down there and see if that damn nose wheel's down.
Okay.
You got a handkerchief or something so I can get a little better grip on this? Anything I can do it with? This damn thing just won't come out, Doug. If I had a pair of pliers, I could cushion it.
To hell with this. Go down and see if that red line is lined up down there. Don't screw around with that 20-cent piece of light equipment.
Eastern 401, I'll go out west just a little further if we can here and see if we can get this light to come on.
All right.
It's always something. We could have made the schedule.
Well, we can tell if the damn gear is down by looking down at the indices.
It's got to be a faulty light. Doug, this damn thing just won't come out.
All right, just leave it there.
Eastern 401, how are things coming along out there?
Okay.
180.
Well, our first officer has finally come up for air and decided to be the flying pilot again. And what does he see on the altimeter? 100 feet. What's he expecting to see? Exactly the 2000. So how many of you all think the aircraft can be saved at this point? Absolutely. All he had to do, or the captain, was push up on the power on the throttles, pull back on the control wheel, and fly this thing right away from the ground. It would have probably bottomed out about 10 feet. But what is the true problem here? This crew has become so channelized on this 20-cent piece of lighting equipment that they think that they're in an aircraft on the autopilot at 2,000 feet. When in actuality, the aircraft that they're riding in, because nobody's flying anymore, has been in a slow, insidious descent and is now down to 100 feet. Ladies and gentlemen, this crew spends the next 12 seconds, the rest of their lives, trying to figure out what has happened instead of reacting to what's happening now.
Hey, we did some of the altitude here.
What?
We're still at 2,000, right?
Hey, what's happening here?
Unfortunately, 99 people lost their lives that night because the crew of Eastern Flight 401 became channelized on a burned out light bulb. Nothing else structurally wrong with that aircraft. Now we show you this video to give you the opportunity to reflect and think if you have any burned out light bulbs in your workplace. Or do you work in an environment where you can allow someone to focus on something so small and fly a portion of your business into the ground? In just a moment, Whiz is going to come back up and give you a technique to help you recognize and eliminate task saturation from your world. And I guarantee if you use this technique, you'll come up for air before you see 100 feet. Thanks. Whiz.
Nice job, Jules. Leave it to an Air Force person to be an absolute buzzkill. Wow. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to getting on that flight back to Miami International Thursday. That's great. Whiz, I was a 5 martini flyer, and you just made that 10. Folks, as you would imagine, numerous positive changes came about as a result of that mishap. Obviously, we debriefed that mishap. Anybody hear old Red in the tower? Hey, Eastern 401, how are things coming along out there? You know what he saw? On his radar scope, they left their assigned altitude of 2,000 feet and entered a descent. Do you think that could have been communicated a little bit better? Today, Eastern 401, I show you leaving your assigned altitude of 2,000 feet, say intentions. Nothing, we're troubleshooting. Aircraft systems. Today, if you're boarding the aircraft, sometimes you'll hear the cockpit checks going on. Altitude, altitude, pull up, terrain. Well, duh. But that was a pretty good example of what can happen when we become channelized on something that's insignificant and bad things can happen. What I want to do right now is teach you what I call a cross-check, or what's going to be a cross-check to success to help you defeat this task saturation. Now, the number one mission objective of any aviator, maintain aircraft control. Don't hit the ground or anything attached to it. And we do that by doing what we call constant attitude checks. And it's not whether Pat shows up with a smile on his face, right? It's the attitude of the aircraft. And when we're flying around at night or in bad weather, we need an instrument that's going to let us know if we're climbing or descending, turning left or turning right. And we call that instrument the attitude indicator. Now, this is just a typical aircraft cockpit, and the attitude indicator is that instrument right in the center. It's also the largest instrument, so in my brain housing group, that means it's pretty important. Now, here's the attitude indicator up close. So for all the Marines in the audience, the blue represents the sky, and the brown represents, hey, here we go. Go Army. The ground. Now, I want you to look at the screen and see if you can pick something up over the next couple seconds. Anybody picking up what we call a scan or a pattern? This is what we call a hub and spokes cross-check. Attitude indicator's looking good. Airspeed. I'm a little slow, add some power, back to the attitude indicator. Heading. I'm assigned 360, I'm flying 360, back to my attitude indicator. A nice smooth hub and spokes cross-check. But we just saw a pretty good example of what can happen when we focus on something that's pretty insignificant and the rest of it tends to break down. So I have a question for the Top Guns in this room. What's your attitude indicator? You as an individual, as a team, as a business unit, what is your attitude indicator? Maybe it's customer excellence. Folks, if we're not providing excellent service, solutions, technologies, you name it, to our customers, we're not sitting here in the Palazzo, man. We're at the Motel 8 in Detroit. Customer excellence. But guess what? That's not the only thing that we can focus on, right? Whiz, I got to worry about my pipeline. We have got to do better work across our business units. We have got to go out and execute VBC training. And oh, by the way, these little things every once in a while that occur, meetings and emails. Half of you in this room are sitting there going, yeah, this is pretty neat stuff. I think I just went over 100 emails in my inbox. Shoot me. But always come back to your attitude indicator, and that's going to let you know whether you're flying into the Everglades or not. We've planned. We briefed the plan to our team. We went out and executed. Now it is time to debrief. 45 minutes to the second after my wheels would touch the runway, I would get into a debriefing room. The door would shut, the name tag would come off, and the rank would come off the shoulders. And we would hold what we call a nameless and rankless debrief, where no punches are pulled. Now, I'm going to use these three ladies right here. Okay, you, ma'am, you're a general, okay? She's like, damn right. Sometimes somebody recognized it around here. 2 new hires, 2 first lieutenants also went flying with us that day. I'm a mid-level officer, I'm a major. I led the planning, I briefed us, I led the execution airborne, now I'm gonna lead the debrief. General didn't have such a good flight. What do you think we do in that debrief? Don't have anything for you, ma'am. Good job. Think we do that in the military? First of all, she didn't get to be a general by not doing this. We call it inside-out criticism in a debrief. Whiz, I had a horrible flight. I was off altitude all day. My formation flying was horrible, and I put a bomb so far off target, you better call the State Department. Bad flight. What's that do? That lowers the barriers to communication, doesn't it? I got 2 new hires, 2 young aviators with 100 hours in the jet. Somebody sitting there with 3,000 hours in the jet admitting a mistake. What's that do? That lets the air out of the room. Wow, she's human. And she made some execution errors. And in my world, if she didn't recognize an execution error, what do? Ma'am, do you also know X, Y, and Z? Whiz, I did not know that happened. I was task saturated. Thank you. With debriefing, folks, it ain't personal, it's professional. Because I'll tell you what, 2 months after this flight, when I'm going downtown over Syria or wherever, who am I going to be dragging on my wing? The general or those two? What an absolute failure would be if we didn't surface the lessons learned that we all saw on that mission. And it's funny to say this in this room, but a debrief is like Vegas in church. What goes on in the debrief stays in the debrief. And it's a church-like atmosphere where we're going to surface our lessons learned, improve our execution, and walk out of here better. Debrief's over, door opens up, name tag, back on the chest, rank back on the shoulder. Whiz, give me 100 push-ups. Ma'am, I'll give you 200. When do you need them by? But in that room, it is sacrosanct. Anybody ever see the JV team flying around, the Air Force Thunderbirds? What about the U.S. Navy Blue Angels? There we go. See? Yeah, all right. Hey, pro, go Navy. Absolute best of the best. These individuals fly sometimes a Coke can distance apart, inverted, 350 to 400 knots at a couple hundred feet above the ground in front of an air show crowd, 50,000 to maybe 200,000 people at some air shows. These professionals fly the same air show routine over and over again for 2, sometimes 3 years, depending on their position on the team. Do you think that these professionals feel the need to debrief after the 10th, 100th, 200th time they flew that same air show? Let's go fly with the Blue Angels and see what they have to say about the debrief.
For over 6 decades, the United States Navy Blue Angels have been performing incredible flight demonstrations that push themselves and their aircraft to the very edge of their capabilities. After every flight, the team also goes through a critical debriefing process, which they consider just as important as the actual flight itself. For each and every maneuver, they hash out what worked, what didn't, and no punches are pulled.
We have to be as wide open to criticisms as we can possibly be. In the very structured platform in which we debrief, we examine our mistakes so that we get the very best information to improve every time we fly. I'll tell you how specific it gets. We even debrief the march out to the airplanes and the march back at the conclusion of the show.
What's most remarkable about the post-flight debrief is that within a military structure, where rank is so highly regarded, a debrief among the Blues is nameless and rankless. Everyone universally acknowledges it's not who's right, it's what's right.
Rank or experience doesn't come into play. Those things are good, but you have to set those aside when the criticism starts to come, because that's the only way you're going to learn the maneuvering. That's the only way you're going to get to where the maneuver looks good and it's safe, day in and day out, every demonstration.
Take a safety, low brake, cross, first one.
I guess the best analogy would be it's like a mulligan. It's your opportunity to come into the debrief and say, look, these are the things that I didn't do right today. And that is giving you the opportunity to fess up, identify your own shortfalls, and say, I'm going to fix these for tomorrow.
I will fix my safeties. Glad to be here. Sean?
Yes, sir, boss. My specific goal was the diamond roll. Safeties, I'll take safety.
The last thing you say is, I'll fix my safeties. I'm glad to be here.
Deviations, no matter how small from the briefed flight plan, are called safeties. These are problems or violations from the strict Blue Angel standards within each flight. Through extensive review of videotape and the experience of the critique team on the ground, each and every maneuver is observed and debriefed move by move. Each performance adjustment or safety is acknowledged by the appropriate team member and, most importantly, punctuated with the phrase, "and I'll fix it."
The debrief is one of the most important things we do. If we don't debrief, if we ever get complacent, we're not only going to kill ourselves, we risk killing somebody else. We've got to be able to learn each and every time we go flying, because in over 65 years, there has never been a perfect flight demonstration put on by the Blue Angels. So we're always working and striving towards executing a demonstration flawlessly.
I made this mistake, and I'll fix it. Very important pronoun use. If companies do debrief, what do they call it? Anybody ever hear the term post-mortem? Who the hell wants to go to a post-mortem? I plan on being at 1, and I better be asleep for it. The name already implies something negative happened. But did you notice who led the debrief? That gentleman's call sign, funny enough, is boss. Blue Angel number 1 is boss. And he led with a very important pronoun, I. If leaders do postmortems in the business world, what pronouns do they usually come in with a whole belt load full of? You, we, us. Yeah, we'll get to that, Kemosabe. This is the I, not the we phase. You need to set the tone for this debrief that we're going to be nameless and rankless. The gentleman in that video, Scott Cardvet, Intake, one of my best friends, known him since 1992 when we went through flight school together in Kingsville. Blue Angel, he's also at Afterburner, one of our executive consultants. I got to fly with him with the Blue Angels in an air show in Oklahoma City. And in the debrief, Intake said, hey, I was 20 feet low on the loop brake cross, and I'll go ahead and fix that. I'm sitting there scratching my head. I'm like, are you kidding me? That air show crowd in Oklahoma City had about 50,000 people. How many people in that 50,000 crowd saw him 20 feet off altitude? How many of the other 5 Blue Angels who were squeezing the death out of the stick, flying 36 inches apart, saw him 20 feet off altitude? Who saw him 20 feet off altitude? He did. And that's the mentality you have to be a high-performing team. When you can sit there and go, I didn't even know that mistake happened, and you fessed up to it, I trust you. That's the ethos that you have to have. I like this saying. In the military and in my companies, and the companies I work with at Afterburner, respectful truth over artificial harmony. Kill the artificial harmony and have respectful truth. Outside of our debriefing rooms is this saying. It's not who's right, it's what's right. And that's that mentality we have to have as we begin debriefing at MTS. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow in some of our time together. The goal of debriefing is about improving future execution. It is about getting better and not assigning blame. So hopefully by this point in the morning, I have a few believers in the flawless execution model. If I can get you to plan using those 6 steps, getting that mission objective that's clear, measurable, and achievable, all the way down to step 6, planning for contingencies. No more firefighting. Let's contingency plan, folks. If I can get you to brief your team, and when you brief, you get vertical head nods, and you get the response, I got it. And they mean it. If you can go out and execute and defeat that performance-draining task saturation, and finally, if you can debrief, and when you debrief, you make it nameless, you make it rankless, you're going to win. I guarantee you. I won on my battlefield, literally, and I win in my companies and the companies Jules and I work with as well at Afterburner. Now, we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to go to our breakout sessions, and we're going to be having lunch after that. But most importantly, after lunch, our commanding officers are going to be showing up, obviously, Commander Hammergren, and also beer. And as a Navy guy, I'm never missing a presentation where there's beer involved. So I plan on being here for this one. Right now, Jules and I are going to head south, and we're going to head down and work with the SCS team. Kev, Dan, and the 3 TVPs, right? Bob, Kev, Robert. We're going to work with their team. They're the special forces, right? Those are your Green Berets and your SEALs. We're going to do what we call a rapid planning workshop. I just demonstrated what we're going to do in those 6 steps. We're actually going to go plan some real-world business and mission objectives with them. In an hour and 15 minutes, they're going to walk out with an 80% plan that's pretty damn airtight. So we're going to demo, and then we're going to do. So before we head to break, I want to look you guys in the eyes, and I want to say happy hunting from Jules and I, because this might not be the this might be the last time we see each other, but it's not going to be for me. And ladies and gentlemen, please help me thank Jules for her participation as well. Jules, come on up. Obviously, I kid, we have a lot of good inter-service rivalry. I mean, we have ships, we have submarines, we have aircraft carriers, we have all sorts of stuff, and the Air Force has golf courses. But thank you. Duh, I joined the wrong service, right? So thank you for Jules. But we want to wish you all happy hunting as you head to your breakouts. Use everything that you learned today and apply it. I don't care if it's red teaming, debriefing, contingency planning. Take a little bit of it and apply it. And do me a favor, on behalf of Jules and I, go out there, kick ass, and take names. Thanks for having us, folks. Enjoy.